Hi everyone, back once again. We're here to talk about the most practical of vehicles to the lesser spotted people carrier. Keep watching. So people carriers are massively practical, especially for those of you with a couple of kids and a dog and a bike and all the rest of it. So they have taken a bit of a back seat, if you pardon the pun, with SUVs coming in, and more manufacturers have stopped producing their old faithful people carriers. So we're just going to have a look at some here, and we're going to have a look at what you can get for under £5,000. A lot of these things are used as basically moving skips on wheels to load the kids and the mud and the sand and the dog and everything else that's filthy and grimy in your life into a car and move it from one place to another. So I think under £5,000 is where a lot of people are looking at these kind of cars. So let's have a look and see what's out there, and have a look at some of the common issues on them. Firstly, guys, sorry about my voice and dishevelled appearance, but it's silly o'clock in the morning here. I've woken up early to get this video done. My voice is probably not the best, and I'm suffering with the blessed hay fever, which is the blight of all an Englishman, isn't it? Bear with me. So they have taken a bit of a back seat, if you pardon the pun. So let's have a look at some of these, and we're going to get started with this Mazda 5. So I always like the 5. I think it's not a bad looking car for a people carrier. The other thing I like about it is it's got the sliding rear doors, which is fantastic if you're trying to get kids in and out of car seats, you know, particularly the young ones where you've got them in baby carriers and stuff like that. It's so much easier with a slidey door, especially as parking spaces over here all tend to be designed for like a Fiat 500, and you know, you sometimes get about that much room, don't you, to open the door. And obviously the parent and child spaces are always filled up with pensioners, so it's quite difficult to get a child in and out of a car sometimes. So yeah, I really like those. And I know inside the interior is not the best, but what do you expect in this kind of car, really? They're just supposed to be kind of used and abused a bit, aren't they, people carriers? As you can see, it's basically a van with the seats down, so great for your IKEA runs and things. And even if you've just got the 5 seats up, you've got a really nice big boot as well. There's the slidey door example, leather interior, the little trays for your kids to kick. So this one has done 86,000 miles. It's a manual 5-door 2-litre petrol, and it's ULEZ compliant. I'll probably do a video on this at some point, but sorry, hay fever. Mazdas are always known for being fairly reliable cars. I did look at the sort of common faults on these, and there aren't really too many. Just a quick reminder, guys, just to help me out, just take 10 seconds to give the video a like. Please subscribe to the channel if you haven't already done so, and follow me on Twitter at notaguru3, which is all lowercase. Also, checking the links in the description. There's a link there. If you're a really nice person, you can buy me a coffee if you want. Thanks a lot. I guess the thing to look out for on all of these MPVs is that they are ideal cars for clockers. So you really want to vigorously check that service history and the previous mileage on it using all the tools available to you. I did a video recently on doing history checks on cars, and it's amazing just how much you can find out if you go digging in the right places. So please watch that video. I'll put a link to it up there, but go and watch that video because it will help you. But yeah, especially with MPVs, because they are so practical. You do get them being used as airport taxis and what have you, and it's just an ideal thing for someone to clock. It's always worth just calling Mazda and finding out if that car's had all the recalls it should have had. So if there were any recalls on it, you know, did it go into a dealership and have those recalls dealt with? I couldn't really find any huge issues with Mazda 5s to be aware of. The other thing to mention on this one is it's ULEZ compliant, which you see here. I'll do a video on ULEZ and what it means, but it's not an online resource for videos of a certain nature involving a couple of ladies. It's actually the ultra low emission zone. So obviously there's one in London now and a few other cities across the UK, and I'm sure it's something that will expand in the next few years. Yeah, London, I think it's an extra £12.50 a day on top of the congestion charge if you don't have a ULEZ compliant car. So it's a real factor that people need to start thinking about, because even if where you live now, I mean, I live just outside Bournemouth, Bournemouth doesn't have a ULEZ zone, an ultra low emission zone at the moment. If it does at some point, and it costs me 12 quid every time I want to drive into the middle of Bournemouth, that's going to be a big factor in the buying decision of the next car, you know. So on to the next one, we've got the Qashqai Plus 2. This one's a 2010 1.5 diesel Accenta 2-wheel drive. And yeah, I mean, everyone knows about the Qashqai. It sort of changed things, didn't it? It was the first real kind of huge successful crossover SUV to my knowledge. And they were massively popular. I think the thing that some people complained about is that it didn't have quite enough space for the family and everything that you need to transport the family. So as you can see, if you have it with the back seats down, you've got a huge boot there. So it's really good kind of estate car levels. What happened to estate cars, by the way? Video on those coming up before too long. If you put the back seats up, you've still got a little boot here, which is fairly usable, and you can put the seats up independently, which I think you can on all these cars, which is great, because quite often you might just be carrying 6 people and you still need to get some stuff in. So yeah, very popular cars. As I said, this one's got full service history. Again, check it out properly, as using the techniques I suggest in that video I mentioned before. And then what do what cars say about common problems with the Qashqai? Clogged DPFs, clogged and broken DPFs, because they're quite often used for short journeys. The school run, it should be given away by engine management warning light. So if you get a clogged DPF, you can have it flushed, but broken one can be very expensive, so you really want to get that checked out. Air conditioning also has a habit of letting bacteria build up, so you get like a damp smell inside. That can be dealt with by a professional, but you know, it's going to cost you a few quid. So if you get in the car and it does have a nasty damp smell, you want that sorted before you get the car, ideally. Sluggish or unresponsive diesel engines mean that the turbocharger or the exhaust gas recirculation valve, possibly both, has failed and will need replacing. Blue or black smoke on startup's an indication that the turbo's gone. So if the turbo needs replacing, that's a lot of money. An engine that surges or feels like it's revving harder than you intend it to is usually just an engine management issue that can be cured relatively cheaply with a software update. Right, next one's a Ford Galaxy 2012 2-litre TDCi Z-Tech power shifts. That's the automatic gearbox. You see tons of these on the road, don't you? And look at the size of that thing. They are actually fairly huge, these cars, and yeah, that's a full sort of van spec inside. They are huge with the seats down, and I mean, if you're someone that regularly does IKEA runs, you're in heaven with one of these things, really. I had one of these for about 10 days after mistakenly putting petrol into my brand new diesel Mazda CX-5. Ooh. Not the best thing I've ever done, but yeah, it's great. I absolutely loved it, to be fair. It was a 2-litre diesel, just felt good to drive. It actually feels better to drive than you would expect for such a huge car, and really great on long motorway journeys and stuff like that. Really good car. Liked it a lot. I mean, this one's not probably the best example, but 2012 model for 4,200 quid is quite good. It's got a bit of spec on it, as you can see. Sad to see her go. Need a small car now, just 2 of us. Smoke-free, pet-free, service history, recent MOT, blue, 3 owners, 4250. So it's service history, not full service history. So you want to check out exactly how much they've got, how recent it is, and if anything's been done outside of a dealership. So if someone was doing oil changes themselves, and if they were, have they got any kind of proof of that? Have they got receipts for oil, if nothing else, oil and filters, you know? Because these kind of cars need service history. They have a fairly tough life. You want that oil changed as it should be, as you do with any car, really. But B, it helps to show that the thing hasn't been clocked and hasn't been used as a taxi or something, or whatever it may be. So service history is massively important. Running costs, tax on this one's 210 quid a year, and combined MPG of 47. I think when I had one, I was getting about 35, 40 out of it. So a lot of it's shared. A lot of the design of the car and kind of running gear side of things is shared with the SMax. But the Galaxy doesn't have some of the problems that the SMax had. We will look at the SMax as well, because that makes a lot of sense to a lot of people. So we will look at S-Max as well. But the Galaxy is probably a bit better on the reliability front than the S-Max. And in driver surveys and things, it's scored higher than the S-Max. Reports of power steering, pumps failing. Electrical gremlins are also reported, with the alarm system being singled out as a recurring fault. Poorly fitted cabin trim, questionable build quality frequently reported, along with door seals that refuse to stay in place. So probably none of those are huge issues. Possibly power steering pump might be, but the others are probably not hideous. There have been a few recalls as well, so check that out with the dealership. As I said before, just call a Ford dealer, see if that car's been in and had the recalls dealt with as and when it should have done. Reliability is not a huge problem, although check older cars carefully. Right, next we're going on to the Vauxhall Sofia Tera. Now, always with a used Vauxhall, buyer beware, really. And there will be Vauxhall fans out there that try and give me a load of grief, but I've had lots of Vauxhalls, and I've only had probably 2 of them that didn't cost me serious money within 6 months. So be aware. And also the more modern cars filled with sensors that seem to fail every 5 minutes. And the sensors not expensive, but they're not the easiest things to swap, and they do cost a bit of money to have done. So, just buyer beware. Make sure you get a good example, get it checked over by a mobile mechanic or something. Make sure the service history is absolutely as it should be. But the Zafira is a very practical car, and they're not the worst looking thing for an MPV. So it looks like a nice, tidy example on the face of it. It's got sat nav, as you can see, manual, HPI cleared, 12 months MOT, 7 seats, 2 keys, sat nav, full service history, front and rear parking sensors, start stop, eco-friendly air conditioning, steering wheel, electric windows and mirrors, cam belt, water pump, where's that gone? Has been changed, all tyres in good condition, smoke free, pet free, one owner, 4995. That looks like a great example, doesn't it? Obviously check that service history out, but that does look like a very good example. And running costs, 62.8 mpg. That sounds hopeful, but 30 quid annual road tax. 2 litre diesel, EcoFlex 16 valve tech line. So let's have a look at common faults on these. Make sure all electrical systems in the car work, and carefully check that all seats recline, slide and fold flat as they should. There have been reports of minor non-engine problems related to starting the car and malfunctioning sat-nav systems. There have also been issues with diesel particulate filters getting blocked. Again, that's going to happen in most diesel cars when they're used on short runs. Like diesel cars with DPFs need a good run every once in a while, and I guess the MPVs are going to be more susceptible to that than some, because a lot of people are just using them for the school run and just local travelling with the kids, so they don't get that good run to clear the DPF out. You can get the DPF flushed through, you can get that system flushed. Someone come out and do it on your drive. It's not massively expensive, and it's probably worth doing if you were to get one of these at kind of second hand, particularly a low mileage one, because that's probably testament to the fact that it hasn't had long runs. Xenon headlights, where fitted, have been known to fail and cost a considerable amount to fix. Be sure to check the electrics in general, since interior lights and radios have been known to be troublesome. Right, so that's a really key point. You probably saw that on the news, it was everywhere at the time, but one of these caught fire and they had to recall 220,000 cars. So you definitely need to call that Vauxhall dealership and make sure that if the car was eligible for the recall, that it had the recall. Any recall that should have taken place, all right? So check that out. If it hasn't had it, by the way, ask the dealer if you can have it done now. They might say no because too much time's passed, but I guess they're more likely to have you in and have it done. Now, I've got one of these on the drive, albeit a slightly newer one, but this one looks like it's been owned by possibly someone called Kevin or Trevor, because they've replaced the grille and put some lively alloys on it and stuff. I guess someone's decided that they needed an MPV but weren't ready to give up on life yet, so they've tried to tart this one up. This is the 1.4 petrol, again ULEZ compliant, manual, 7 seats. Touran, by the way, it'd be good to mention the model, wouldn't it? And the design of these hasn't changed in an age. This is a 2009. We've got a 2018 sitting on the drive, and it looks almost identical, apart from ours is standard VW spec rather than Halford spec. There we go. Very functional and utilitarian looking, as you might expect in a VW. Looks like it's fairly poverty spec on the interior, this one, although possibly with a sat-nav. I would call these things unremarkable but very workmanlike after 2 years of ownership. That's what I'd say about ours. 39 MPG it says, and 250 quid a year in tax. It's only 1.4 petrol. I mean, we've got the 1.6 diesel and does about 45 combined driving, I would say. Excellent condition inside and out. 2 former keepers, long MOT, HPI clear. No mention of service history whatsoever. So definitely need to look into that. Something else you can look out for on cars is like a silly amount of wear on the seats, and maybe the interior trim has taken a real battering. That suggests that, you know, it's a high mileage car. So always have a look at the seats. Obviously people can replace the seats or repair them, refurbish them. You know, it's sometimes a bit of a giveaway. That one looks very tidy, so it's either completely genuine or it's been dealt with. The headrests are not on the back seats there, and you would definitely want those, because those back seats are quite low and there'd be no head protection if someone went up the back of you. So if you were to look at one of these, do look if it's got the rear headrests, and if it hasn't, you either want them to supply you with some, or you want the cost of a couple of those taken off the price. Okay, because that's something you shouldn't let your kids go in the back without those. 3,699 quid. Faults. Possible flywheel failure was identified as a problem. We've also heard reports of a seatbelt warning system going haywire. Most common problems are centred around non-engine electrics, which have been known to disable warning lights on the dash. Also, the engine cooling fan has been known to cut out and fail. Some turbochargers on diesel engines have been known to fail on older engines. It's worth noting that earlier models had a belt-driven cam in petrol engines, while later 2008 models went for a chain-driven cam. Right, finally, we're going to have a look at this SMax, because, you know, the SMax does make a lot of sense to a lot of people. If you want lots of space but you don't quite want the size of a Galaxy, this is one that a lot of people opt for. You see a ton of these things on the road. Some kind of bodily fluid on that middle seat, or a drink or something's been spilt on it. That doesn't look great. You think they'd get that dealt with, wouldn't you? You could clear that quite easily with a little carpet cleaner, to be fair, and on the passenger seat as well. Ooh, 83,000 miles on this one. It's an automatic 2-litre diesel. Full service history, very nice car, no faults, HPI clear, new MOT, any inspection welcome. Rear parking sensors, climate control, next MOT due in May. Right, this is the key thing with an S-Max, and I know people that fall into each of these categories. Some owners are over the moon with their cars, whilst others appear to suffer fault after fault. Electrical complaints are the most common and can affect everything from windscreen wipers to engine malfunctions. One fault causes the battery to drain in a couple of days if the car is not used, leaving owners stranded. Fit and finish of the trim appears to be an issue too, with items working loose and others breaking over time. The centre console and door trims seem particularly vulnerable, and the interior can look scruffy quickly if not looked after. Some cars suffer mysterious steering clonks, especially at low speed. Dealers can fix these, but the problem has a habit of reappearing. So really, the story here is to get the thing checked over. And as I've said in that other video, get a mobile mechanic out, you know, pay him for an hour of his time or her time, and get the thing checked over. It's a wise investment. You know, it might cost you 80 quid, might cost you 100 quid. But just get them to go over the thing, give it a little road test. Somebody mechanically minded to check it, and that knows the cars and knows the faults on the cars. It's really worth its weight in gold to you. Because if you're one of the ones that gets one of the bad examples, you know, it just ruins it for you. You'll just want rid of it, and you'll probably lose money in the process. So if you do want an S-Max, and a lot of people do because they're quite nice looking for an SUV, they're very car-like to drive as well, but just get the thing checked over. And I would say if you've got £5 to spend, get the best one you can possibly afford to get. Thanks for watching, guys. See you next time.